Thanks, Ron. So I'm going to talk about LLM ops on Azure. Okay. So AI is everywhere these days. After ChatGPT, the Gen AI made things possible that wasn't before. And everywhere you look, there are new types of AI models coming up saying, they are better than prior models. There are, new AI companies being created. Large companies are doing things with AI that wasn't done before, right? MIT Sloan Management Review did a research where organizations, reported that 87% of the organizations believe that AI will give them a competitive edge, and that's not a surprise because majority of people and organizations use AI to gain that competitive edge. But what's slowing down the adoption of this Gen AI technology? Partly, it's like the state of the art is evolving so quickly that people are kind of playing a wait game, thinking, okay, let this technology mature. Maybe, we'll see what everybody is settling with, and then we will implement that. But by that time, it might be too late, and you might have lost the competitive edge that others are gaining, right? And then there is the development aspect of it. This is a whole paradigm shift in terms of how you develop applications, right? It's a different type of technology, and there are no skill set in the market today who can build this the right way. And then there is the context aspect of it. The large language models are new types of AI models. So you don't train the model, it comes pre-trained, and there are ways to customize it. You can ground it to your data, but that's an art and science in itself, and people haven't yet figured out how to really customize it to their environment, to their use case, to their data. Then there is the evaluation aspect of it, where uh, this requires new type of evaluation that other ML models or other application testing did not have the kind of evaluation requirement that Gen AI has. Right. So, how to evaluate and how to safeguard these applications, is another challenge. So, it all comes down to the keyword operationalization. Technology is fine, but how do you integrate it into your business in a way that removes concerns around privacy, security, grounding to the data, the developer experience? Like, how do you do it so that it becomes part of your business, just like any other technology is, right? So what is operationalization from a business perspective? It's how do you streamline the technology so that the business is able to take advantage of AI driven outcome. And from an IT perspective, it's how do you do the development, implementation, and maintenance and monitoring aspect of the Gen AI. Now, so that brings to LLM ops, right? So LLM ops, just like DevOps or ML ops, it's operationalization of LLMs that are used to build Gen AI application. And just like traditional DevOps, it involves people, processes, and platforms. So you need multiple people. You need developer. You need business users. You need people who understand AI, and you need people who understand the compliance requirements to kind of work together to figure out how to operationalize it. So and it requires new type of process in place for the organization. It required new types of development tools and platforms to do the operationalization. So comparing to traditional machine learning ops, there are few subtle differences. With ML ops, you are primarily working with machine learning engineers and data scientists. It's ML ops can be part of an application, but it doesn't have to be. ML ops can be just you do an ad hoc data science on your own, whatever is the output of it, based on that, you make some decision, and that might require an adjustment to an application, but they don't have to be connected in real time. But LLM ops with Gen AI application, they are applications to begin with. Like, even if it's not integrated to any other application, the chatbot that you have, that in itself is an application. So you have app dev already part of the process, and that you have to make sure the machine learning engineer, people who understand how to work with LLM, and the app developers work together to build the simplest form of application, which is your chatbot, to a complex custom co-pilot type of application. You have to make sure they work together, and it has different types of assets. Right? The traditional machine learning had your models, the data, the environment. With LLMOps, you have agents, plugins, prompts. There are different types of assets that need to be managed. From evaluation, traditional machine learning had, metrics like, F1 score, accuracy, root mean square error, right? With LLM ops, you have things like quality, harm, correctness, cost and latency, because it's an application. So it adds additional metrics that your ML ops did not have, right? With machine learning model, you're kind of building from scratch, that you have libraries, but you bring your data, you train the model, and then you deploy it and create a REST API to implement it. But with LLMOps, you start with your uh, foundational model, which is already a pre-trained model with large amount of data, and then you figure out how to fine tune and customize that model. Typical LLM lifecycle is, you start with that foundational LLM, your data, and then you do some prompt engineering. This is where the one shot and few shot learning that you do to customize your LLM to make sure it responds in a certain way. So this is where you say, I want you to work like an advertising agent. I want you to become a travel agent, or I want you to be a recruiter, right? So you give it a personality. You tell it the do's and don'ts and hows, and based on that, you customize it to your specific use case. Then you start to experiment with different input outputs, and you evaluate based on your criteria, like how correct is it. Are there any security holes? Can people make it do things that you don't intend it to, right? And you need to automate it. You need to make it part of your CI/CD pipeline, just like any DevOps, but with continuous integration and continuous deployment. Now there is this aspect of continuous evaluation. So as you're doing this, you need to continuously evaluate against these new set of metrics. And once you deploy, you need to have inferencing and monitoring enabled to continuously monitor its behavior. And you need to have a human-based or at application level testing to make sure that it behaves the appropriate way. It's not just enough that the model behaves the right way. The overall application needs to behave in a certain way. So it's that full cycle is the new LLM life cycle, which brings new aspects to your app dev life cycle. Right? uh, if you look at it from a business perspective, the way it starts within the business, that you identify a business need where you might benefit from Gen AI or LLM type of application, and then you create a a RAG architecture, or from you find the right type of a way to implement LLM, right? Then you prepare for your development, and then the development would send feedback back to your LLM engineer saying, this is working, this is not, so go back and readjust the prompt. And then your, Gen AI engineers or LLM engineers, they need to revert back to the business saying, this is working, is it is it going to make the difference for your business use case? So then business users need to give feedback, right? So it's that loop that needs to happen, and the business user, the AI engineer or data scientist or ML engineer, and your application app dev team and QA team needs to work together to do this continuous cycle of management. Right? So it involves automation, just like DevOps. You create your CI/CD pipeline, so you need to automate the building, deploying, and evaluation of LLM. You need to have multidisciplinary collaboration between business, ML engineers, and app devs and QA. It needs to be reproducible. You need to have an asset that you can build in one place, take it and deploy another place, right? And then in terms of deployment, like once it's built, on top of the deployment, you need to add things like content filters and additional layers of security to kind of further safeguard against any unnecessary harm that it could be causing. So what is the platform that Azure has to do all this? It's a new, web-based IDE called Azure AI Studio. It's still in preview, but many organizations have started using it. It has a built-in, chat type of application called Playground that allows you to do ad hoc testing. It has huge library of model catalog that you can use the LLMs from Azure OpenAI. On top of that, the Meta's Llama, Mistra is another model that's getting popularity. All the Hugging Face models, everything is available, and the library keeps growing. So you take whichever model you want to work with. It has a UI-driven way to ground it to your data so that you can quickly create your RAG pattern of application, and then it has responsible AI built in. It uses a development tool called Prompt Flow, which is similar to LangChain. It allows you to orchestrate your model and prompt and the custom Python code that you use to chain all these flows in a very visual way that you can see it. And it has a plugin for VS Code in case you don't want to give people access to Azure portal. You could work with VS Code, and it's an open source project, so you could implement it any way you want, right? So these are some examples of models that are available. NVIDIA has released a huge set of their models that are available on Azure AI model catalog, right? So I talked about RAG pattern. So a typical RAG pattern is, your app would just call an orchestrator, right? And your orchestrator can connect to the large language model from Azure OpenAI, or it can connect to something like Azure AI Search that can do vector search on your data, right? And your data can come from, Cosmos DB, SQL Server, flat file. All of those can be indexed within your Azure AI search, and the orchestrator at runtime is going to decide, based on this prompt, do I just want to get the output from large language model, or do I want to get the search result from Azure AI search, or it's a combination of those? Orchestrator is going to work from the output of both these sources to give you the most optimal output for your query, right? I talked about prompt flow. Prompt flow is kind of the heart of how you orchestrate this LLM and the code. And as you can see, you need to really try it out to understand. But it has these different blocks. That there is one block for LLM, there is one for prompt. When you get started, it starts with a pre-built template and samples which already implement most of the responsible AI. There was, previous talk talked about prompt injection. So how to safeguard against those type of attacks. Those safety best practices are kind of already built in when you create a new flow, and the continuous flow evaluations are also built in, and it's all available to you with a visual DAG type of diagram, so you can visualize how your application flow is happening. And it has built-in intelligence, so the input output of each flow you can change in UI. Once you have that model deployed, your model monitoring needs to follow this process of, once it's deployed, you monitor it continuously because it's continuously generating those logs. So you monitor those logs. That gives you a runtime insight into what's happening. On top of that, when the model is integrated into an application like a chatbot, there are a set of metrics that you evaluate against the output of your application. So there is that metric is also getting collected. On top of that, you might have other systems, like there might be Cosmos DB, storage account, or different systems that are getting integrated. And all of those systems, if you use it on Azure, they both have a diagnostic setting where you can store the logs in log analytics, and through Azure Monitor you can create a visual of all the logs, so you can see across all of your components within your application how things are working, or what logs are generated, so you can see the complete story end to end using a visual dashboard in Azure Monitor. Once you have deployed your model, there is Azure AI Studio includes a feature called content safety, where you can just set threshold on things like violence, self-harm, sexual hate. These are the common kind of responsible AI principles that you want to kind of watch for, right? And Azure AI Studio has built-in ways to add these filters on top of your Gen AI application. So all you have to do is set thresholds on these. Your deployment might look something like, you might take your REST API, deploy it into a Kubernetes cluster, or Azure AI Studio gives you multiple flexibility, including creating your own cluster using a set of VMs that you decide how you want to create your REST API. And once you have created that REST API that embeds your call to your LLM, you have a whole suite of options how you deploy that API, including on-prem or multi-cloud. I mentioned before that prompt flow is open source, so you could really just do pip install prompt flow tool on your existing Python project, and you can start using prompt flow even outside of Azure AI Studio. VS Code has a nice extension to it that you can use. And using prompt flow, if you are writing code from scratch, you can just install the Python library, and you can use that to build your Gen AI application and implement your own custom testing and monitoring if you wanted. That's the end of it. Any questions?